Well, hi there, everybody. Did you hear? No news is good news. Let me repeat that. No news is good news. Hi, everyone. I'm Jack Church. Welcome to my podcast, The Jack Church Show. Coming to you today from the great outdoors of Southern Oregon, along the banks of the beautiful Rogue River as it flows out of Lost Creek Lake and then makes its way all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Our topic today, no news is good news. And these days, it could not be more relevant. Now, if you've lost a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, maybe you lost your favorite pet, God forbid you lost a child, you lost a parent, you lost a job, whatever the loss, it can be a tough season of life. And 2020, you don't need me to tell you, we can add some additional things on top of that loss. A pandemic. Maybe you live where there have been hurricanes. Maybe you live where there have been wildfires. Maybe you live where there have been massive layoffs. Oh goodness, it's almost too much to handle, right? So you go to the television. You decide to watch the news. Please don't. That's right, I've worked in the local news business as a weather guy for over 30 years, and I'm learning quickly, I don't watch the local news. You're saying, well, how can you do that? You work at a news station. Well, it's a little tricky. I spend a lot of time in the weather office, and I have to wear an earpiece to hear the newscast so I know when I'm going to be on. But you know what? I've gotten pretty good now that I can time it just right where I don't have to have that earpiece in and hear the news. I can just put it back in just in time for when I'm going to go on the air and do the weather. Now for you, there's that thing called the on-off button. The problem is a lot of people are having a problem with turning it off, tuning it out. And it's becoming an epidemic. Did you know that? Now again, remember, we're going to say no news is good news. This is not going to be a bad news podcast. But I'm going to tell you a few things that you already knew, but you tuned in thinking, well, I need some more positive reinforcement, and that's what we're going to do. First of all, there are actually studies out there now that people have done on the effects of watching too much bad news. The result, it's not good. You don't need to fill your mind with all that bad stuff that they're putting out there right now. Now, if you don't believe me, I'm going to share with you a quick story. There's a friend of mine who had what they call nerve issues, just always nervous and anxious. And their doctor had put them on some medication and it was helping somewhat, but not as much as they had hoped. And they went in for an appointment and the doctor asked, this is just recently, are you watching much news? And they go, oh, I watch it every night. The doctor actually told them, you need to stop doing that. You need to get away from it. They're like, okay, I'll do my best. Well, this friend of mine said it was like withdrawing from a drug. They said it was incredibly difficult to do. And my friend Dave Ramsey, who has his own show, much bigger than I'll ever be, he talks about debt-free living and things like that. But Dave also talks about how news has become basically fear porn. People get a look at it and they can't look away. They get hooked. And that's the situation my friend was in. They were hooked on watching the news, but they gave it up. Said it was very difficult. About 2 weeks in, my friend then decided they weren't going to take this particular prescription medication from their doctor. And they asked the doctor, would that be okay? And the doctor said, sure, we can try that. Let's see what happens. Well, it was amazing. My friend tells me that after 3 weeks of no news, no watching the news, and no taking the medication, that they feel like they did 15 years ago. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that encouraging? Knowing that they unplugged and got away and they got their life back. Now, there'll be those who are going to argue and say, but no, we have to stay informed. And yes, to some extent we do. But my parents, for example, they've stopped watching news and they're older. And I've asked them, I said, why did you guys stop watching? They said, it made us anxious. I said, well, do you worry about if something happens you're not knowing? My mother goes, I'm sure my cell phone will let me know if it's something dramatic. And I get that. In fact, the other day, I told you, I don't watch news, but I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to flip over. I'm just curious. What are the big major, these news channels doing these days? Oh my gosh. It was like a horror show. One network is telling you about how one candidate, if he's elected, it's going to be the end of the world and the end of mankind. The other network, same thing, different candidate, end of the world, end of mankind. It's like, wow, I had no idea that's the way it worked these days. Oh, I kind of did. It's not like when Walter Cronkite and Huntley Brinkley and those guys were doing the news, is it? You know, I like Walter Cronkite when he would just say, and that's the way it is, on whatever date it is. No editorial, nothing else. And we moved on with our life. Life was also simpler though. We didn't have constant barrages of news, usually bad news, coming to us via our phone, via our Instagram account, our Twitter account, our Facebook account, over so many sources. It was bombarding us. It's like my good friend Lola, who I talk about a lot, who's 94 years old. She was talking about how the pandemic, she goes, you know, she says, I came out of the Great Depression, the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the assassination of Kennedy, and now this. And she goes, you know what the difference was when all those other events were taking place? And I said, no, Lola, what? She goes, we didn't have all these devices telling us 24/7 how awful it was. So we didn't know. We knew it was bad, but we weren't being bombarded with it all the time. Hadn't thought about it that way, but it's true. So the advice is, and consider the price, and I know you've been told this before, if indeed you can find a way to unplug, you need to do it. You really do. You need to find more positive outlets. Myself, I've got, Netflix, I've got Apple TV, and then I've got regular cable as well, but you could set up like your favorite channels. I don't have a single news channel programmed in. They're all entertainment channels. Now, I can tell you, if I think there's something going on in the world that I really need to find out about, maybe I'll put in the keywords or whatever and find out what the latest deal is, read the article, and stop. Okay, let's not go into then getting caught up and going into this article and that article, because before long, it's like falling in a deep, dark hole and you can't get out. This is real, gang. It really is. It is a different age that we live in, but proof of how wonderful the world is where I'm standing today. This magnificent riverfront that I'm standing on, fall colors, blue sky, temperature could not be nicer. There's wildlife around. It's quiet. It's all good out here. No news is good news. It's an old saying. It's an oldie but a goodie. So how about we try and do that? Hey, maybe if you've got any questions or comments or some other topics you'd like me to talk about, drop me an email at thejackchurchshow@yahoo.com. That's thejackchurchshow@yahoo.com. Love to hear from you guys. And we also appreciate any financial support. You may be so moved to contribute as well. That's available whenever you download the show and you can see all that good stuff. I won't hammer you about that, okay? So until we visit again, as we always say, make it a good day, but you know what? Let's make it a better tomorrow. Bye now.